Hello, glad you can join us. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is in focus in this episode. We'll share discussions on the powerful benefits of diverse teams and how internal audit can drive progress in DE&I. Stay tuned.
The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit.
Amsterdam, Netherlands is the location, and the IIA's 2023 International Conference is the event where audit professionals from around the world will gather to share insights, information, and leading practices in pursuit of internal audit excellence. Here to share more about this much anticipated event is the IIA's Executive Vice President, Global Strategy and Affiliate Relations, Javier Faliato, speaking with the IIA's Senior Manager of Content Development, Robert Perez.
Javier, bienvenidos, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I'm eager to chat with you today about the upcoming International Conference in Amsterdam. And I wanted to start off by discussing a little bit about what's new at the conference this year. One of the big differences is that we're featuring 8 unique learning streams. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me here, Robert. It's always a pleasure. Yes, actually, the international conference this year is bringing new things because we really want to recoup the feeling that we had before COVID, as the most important event of the profession in the year. And yes, as you said, we have like 8 new streams. And what I would like to highlight is that we have a very solid process behind that. So we do research, we have conversations to make sure that we tackle the hot topics for the profession. So we have conversations with many CAEs. We look at on risk in focus, other risk reports, to decide on what are we going to talk about. But I would like to highlight probably one stream, which is the CAE stream. That's one of the new things we have this year, right? This is a stream which is fully dedicated to CAEs, right? Because we understand they have different needs, and they look at the risk and the profession in a different manner. So there's going to be a stream which is just for CAEs.
I mean, it's important, I think, that you mentioned that there's a lot of research that goes into putting a conference like this together and understanding the needs of our CAEs and our other members. Is there any emerging topic, particularly or trend that is of particular interest or excitement for you?
Well, there's always emerging topics, right? But this year, I would say that I would probably highlight 2. First one should be, of course, artificial intelligence. We are all talking about artificial intelligence. We are all looking at ChatGPT. It's kind of addictive. Everyone is, I'm always typing things into ChatGPT. And for instance, if you go in ChatGPT and type, how could I audit the procurement function? Mm-hmm. You still get a very general response, right? It's not still accurate enough, right? But we don't know what's going to happen in 1 year, right? So we have some sessions in the conference that are going to tackle this matter. And I would say from 2 perspectives, right? One, what artificial intelligence can do for internal auditors. But another one, which is probably more important, is the risks that artificial intelligence are bringing to the companies, right? And that affects so many things. And I mean, the algorithms, biases, the ethics of artificial intelligence. There are so many things we haven't spoke about yet. We all saw those letters from Elon Musk and others asking for a stop in artificial intelligence, a pause, to think about what are we doing. So we have like very strong experts in this matter to talk about it in Amsterdam.
I mean, and what you've just discussed really highlights one of the great benefits of international. So for people who have never attended, can you describe the experience a little bit of being at international?
Of course, Robert. I mean, the international conference is the place to be for an internal auditor, right? I mean, our institutes around the world do great conferences. I mean, regarding networking and learning experiences. But the international conference is the only place where you can experience that we're a global profession. The only place that you see that internal auditors from 170 countries speak the same language, right? And so it's from international conference, it's much more than just networking opportunities. It's an experience, right? So I honestly feel that every internal auditor should experience this at least once in a lifetime. I know it's challenging to travel every year to different regions, but at least once or from time to time, I think they should live that.
I think you sort of started touching on what I was going to mention next, is that there is great value in attending international conference, both from learning and networking. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that, or maybe some of the experiences you personally have had over the years?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when we go to conferences, as you said, it's usually networking and learning, right? Those aspects, right? But as I say, I see much more like a rounded experience, but I will tackle on those two things, right? So when it comes to networking, I was actually checking the registrations this morning to international conference. We have people already from 77 countries, which is very impressive, and I think we have way to go, right? Because we expect more than 100 countries represented, right? That's amazing, right? You don't find that anywhere else in the world. But to take advantage of that, I think you should come to the international conference if you're coming with that networking mindset. It's not just about listening to sessions. If you're just gonna do that, I wouldn't bother to go. I mean, you have to go there and take advantage of the networking breaks, of the lunch, social events. We're gonna have a wonderful beach club social event, right? We should take advantage of those things, and I think you will bring connections you could not find anywhere else, right? That's for the networking part. When we think about the learning experience, I mean, the sessions we have in the conference, it's not just the topics, which, as I told you before, they are, I mean, like very carefully selected. But it's also about who's going to be talking about this. And we have their companies. I mean, we have AIG, the International Monetary Fund, Saudi Telecom, Novartis, Euroclear, ING. I'm sure I'm going to forget some, but we have Heineken, Mozilla, Michelin, Whirlpool, Citigroup. You know, we have like the top companies of the world. Sometimes the CAE, sometimes the expert in ESG, the expert in artificial intelligence. Those are the people that it's going to be talking to us about those things. And you will also have opportunities to network with them after the sessions, right?
So obviously we've covered a lot of ground, but is there any closing thoughts or for anyone who attending international for the first time or maybe thinking about attending? Any other closing thoughts?
Yes, maybe a couple of things. One, I forgot when you asked about the topics that I would like to mention. I forgot to mention ESG. I mean, ESG is so important nowadays, not only artificial intelligence. And you know, Europe has been leading the ESG efforts around the world. You know, we have the CSRD. So we're going to have lots of sessions talking about climate change, about how that affects our companies. We're going to have the last COSO guidance presented, you know, on ESG, the World Economic Council for Sustainable Development is going to be talking about the Vision 2050. So I think that's one of the things we're going to touch there. And finally, as a closing comment, I think, as I said before, this is something people should not miss, right? If you think about Europe, for instance, last international conference was in Europe, was 2012 in London. So it's been 11 years, right? And probably in the next 5, 6, 7 years, we won't have another international conference in London, in Europe. So even though it's challenging, I think people should really try to come and don't miss these opportunities, because they will probably regret it.
I'm sure it's going to be an exciting and fabulous time in a beautiful location like Amsterdam this year. So thank you so much for chatting with me, and I appreciate all the work you do and all the great things that are coming up for the IA.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For more information and to register for the 2023 International Conference, visit the IIA.org/IC. Up next, Dolapo Adedeji, Managing Director, Internal Audit and Financial Advisory at Protiviti, and Shalim Matos, CFO at the Atlanta Institute of Internal Auditors, share their powerful perspectives on the benefits and impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion. At the beginning of your presentation, you share some reasons why diversity, equity, and inclusion should be top of mind. Share some of those now.
Yeah, the reality is that we haven't moved the needle when it comes to that. Many companies have created programs around this topic, but the reality is that we're not showing that much action. If we look at the data when it comes to simple numbers like CEs in Fortune 500, we have most of them being white men and white women. People like myself, Latina, we only had one Latina in 2020. And when we were presenting, most of the individuals in our panel were actually not having a CAE that were beyond the white men, white women. So we need to make a change to those numbers. We also spoke about things like the C-suite and the highest paid on those seats. And the reality is that only 25% were women. We only had 1% of LGBTQ community. So those numbers also needs to change.
So how does having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive business culture positively impact business performance?
Oh, it's so important. So important. You know, as we were speaking today, we made it clear it starts with you. So imagine, and I'm just going to use a quick example. You just invest in one person. You invest you support them, you invest in them and let them grow. Before you know, they're adding value to your business or even to your customers. And believe it or not, when your employees or your people thrive, including yourself, your business will thrive. So DEI is absolutely important. And even facts and research have shown that it helps businesses be profitable. It does have a positive impact on businesses.
In your presentation, you share some leading practices for recruiting inclusive talent. What are some of those?
Yeah, recruiters are changing the way that we are acquiring talent. First of all, we're going outside resources like LinkedIn, going to same universities. Why not going to minority universities? We're not going to other websites. Also taking out names, gender, things that might make those blind spots that we have, giving an opportunity to the candidate by having very consistent questions between your candidate pool, and also including other individuals outside yourself or management into those conversations, into those interviews, to ensure that you're having a comprehensive view, a different view of each one of the candidates that you are interviewing. Those are the main ones, but there's a lot that we can do to make sure that we're inclusive.
Can I add to that? I am an example of someone who's standing here where a company chose to come to an HBCU, which is a historically Black university, college or university. And I am one example of that person that was given a chance because they chose to go outside the normal universities that they would normally go to, and then came to Morgan State University and actually hired me. And today I'm a success because somebody decided to give it a chance outside of the normal schools they would go to.
And we went beyond that. So we are challenging the way that we are educating our kids and how we are creating opportunities for those minority schools, universities, to talk about what is internal audit so that the candidates that get to us are really diverse.
Absolutely.
Please share with us some strategies for retaining and developing inclusive talent.
Absolutely. One, start with, and just simple, even before, in terms of, there are two parts to it. There's retaining, but there's also acquiring those talents. So the first thing is you need to have strategies to be intentional, to take out biases. Does that make sense? How can we make it fair? So part of it is blind resumes, right? Having an inclusive interview panel. And then when you hire those folks, the strategies in terms of retaining them is actually getting to know your people. What is unique about this person? What difference is there and what value can they bring to the table? I always explain to everyone, equity is not when you take from one and give to another. Actually, equity is when everyone comes to the table and the pie gets bigger because they're adding value. It makes it bigger. So it's very important that you are intentional in your people. Get to know them, get to support them, give them the right access and resources to excel in which they do. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I will say also, the reality is that we have programs out there for diversity, inclusion, but we need to make sure that we are creating our own microculture in our departments, that we are serving as leaders and trusted business advisors as we're going to other audits and other departments. What are we seeing that they need to change, right? It starts with all of us to change the culture in an organization from micro to macro. And as you are leading your own department, for example, if you're creating a internal audit manual, are you inviting your team to make those decisions? When your company is creating a mission and vision, are you inviting everybody, all the employees, to make sure that they're contributors? So it's not only acquiring all the diverse talent, because the reality is that you can do all of that and not invite them how there's a saying out there that says inviting them to the party and not to dance. So you need to acquire that talent, but make sure that you're using them, because then you're not going to retain them. If they don't feel that they are part of an organization, they're not going to stay with you.
Inclusion.
How can effective internal audit support development of inclusive talent?
Yeah, it starts again by knowing your people. Every individual is different, right? So you need to make sure you're understanding their story, you're understanding where they want to go, and you're supporting that. You're not necessarily being a mentor, hopefully you are, but you're being a coach, you're leading that individual to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So that is your first way of making sure that you're developing. And when it comes to inclusiveness, again, include them in the conversations. If you're issuing a report, make sure that it doesn't come just from you as leader of the internal audit department. Have your senior manager, the lead of the project, have a senior issuing the report, having conversations with senior management. Why not? That is the only way that they can progress in internal audit, if that's what they want, but that is also a way to expose them to other seniors in the organization that might be later interested in that individual's talent.
And there are two parts, and I'm going to add to what Shalim said. There are two parts to it, right? For internal audit to be effective, there are two parts. There's the internal piece, which is your people internally, right, within the department. And she has highlighted those points, just investing in your people, getting to know your people. But there's the other side of things, which is your stakeholders and the business as a whole. How can internal audit continue to impact the business? And part of it is actually having things like cultural audits, having to assess, what they call management's conduct. Actually, conduct audit, cultural audits. These are things that honestly highlights where there are deficiencies or potential areas for growth that internal audit can bring to the forefront. So these are areas I know that a lot of internal audit workshops are beginning to focus on, and they're beginning to make it as part of their audit plan. And I think it's something that more and more audit workshops will continue to do. We're going to see that in the future because the regulators are focused on conduct and culture. So I expect more in that regard, and even ESG, right?
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned about auditing, but one thing that we point in our presentation is that you don't need to do an audit to advocate for change in your organization.
Absolutely.
If you're hiring and you're seeing that the process of hiring is not an inclusive and diverse process, speak up. If you're at a meeting where everybody's having a discussion and you notice that there are people missing at the table, invite them at the table, forward that invitation, challenge the individuals that are there.
Yes.
You can make a change in your department, but you can make a change also in the corporation by just observing and talking with management about these changes that needs to happen.
Wonderful. Shalim and Dolapo, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
And now for a bit of challenging fun we call In Focus. Auditors across all sectors consider a broad range of issues as part of each audit engagement. Among the top considerations stated by CAEs are cybersecurity, governance and culture, fraud, and IT. What is the order of priority of those four? The answer comes from the 2023 North American Pulse of Internal Audit Survey. But no peeking, please. We'll be back with the correct answer in just a few. Recent events have amplified the challenges in overcoming racism, social injustice, and gender inequity. Up next, Laura LeBlanc of the Internal Audit Foundation speaks with Amy Fread, Senior Manager, Risk and Financial Advisory at Deloitte, about internal audit's role in driving diversity, equity, and inclusion, and about her recent presentation at the IIA's GAM conference.
So at the beginning of your presentation at GAM, you share some of the many reasons why diversity, equity, and inclusion should be top of mind in internal audit. How does having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture positively impact business performance?
Yeah, absolutely great question. When we talk about cultivating diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're really talking about creating a sense of belonging. And when I say belonging, I'm thinking about how to make sure we're emotionally present and safe, getting that psychological safety into the workplace for our employees in a group environment. So naturally, when you have this sense of belonging cultivated, you're going to sustain higher performance and more innovation, better results from your employees. We've also seen, as we look at some of the data and studies that have come out, that this new generation, the Gen Zs and the millennials, they're really looking at employers that go beyond. They don't just want sustainability for the environment. They want more of an inclusive culture, and that's a driving force for them in their employment.
So, Amy, what are your recommendations for attaining and developing inclusive talent?
Number one, it starts with being an ally. I'll say it all the time, become an ally. And when we say ally, it's really being a leader who's curious and embracing different cultures, that you want to get out there and understand it. You have to come with curiosity and empathy, because that's asking the questions and then responding to understand instead of trying to give your viewpoint, trying to understand someone else's. The other thing is making sure that we're giving equitable opportunities and assignments. And I say it that way because we may default to assigning the women to be the note taker. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're assigning work based on who hasn't done that recently, who would benefit from doing that. And that's where we get to these opportunities. So many of us fall into this pattern of, I'm going to assign this opportunity because I work with this individual, I trust them. Well, have you ever taken a look at breaking out of that cycle? Pull in someone new, give them a chance. If they've got a good track record, let's give them this opportunity and see where they can run with it.
What are the risks to organizations that do not embrace development of inclusive talent?
I think this ties right back to our discussion earlier of why should you have an inclusive environment? And when we look at the surveys and the data out there, I'm going to go straight to this new ESG requirement that everyone's talking about. We're really, really focused on environmental, but that S, the social part of this, is just as important. And what we see in the surveys and data from our younger generations, our millennials and our Gen Zs, they truly care about that social aspect, and they're actively looking for companies that foster that environment. So by shutting out inclusivity, you're automatically going to shut out some of the top talent that's out there today.
And so, Amy, last question. How can effective internal audit support development of inclusive talent?
I'll go right to our 4 A's: assure, advise, anticipate, and accelerate. So we talk a lot about these, but we need to look at this lens of what's already out there. What key performance indicators and goals has our company communicated, and how can we provide assurance on those controls? This is speaking straight to the heart of internal audit. And then we also need to look at, are we advising our company on our ideas of how we can do this better? Are we actively engaged in the conversations of our full talent lifecycle to make sure that what we're putting plans in place, we're addressing these unconscious biases or things that we may not have thought about before? Thirdly, the anticipating risk. I think it's really critical that we add this to our risk register for when we're watching emerging events in the marketplace and how they can impact our DE&I goals and also our targets that we're trying to reach. And last, the accelerate. We have got to be on the forefront of this. We need to walk the talk and show the organization how to do it by starting first within our own departments.
That's great, Amy. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
IIA Executive Membership delivers all member benefits, plus exemplifies the preeminent membership for a high-level, seasoned internal audit executive. Members access customized tools, tailored content, and peer-to-peer networking focused on leadership, team development, performance, and problem solving. For more info, visit theiaa.org/executive. Now here's the answer to our In Focus challenge. Auditors across all sectors consider a broad range of issues as part of each audit engagement. Among the top considerations stated by CAEs are cybersecurity, governance and culture, fraud, and IT. The question was, what is the order of priority of those four? The answer, fraud at 89%, IT at 80%, cybersecurity at 66%, governance and culture at 65%. Other concerns, such as third-party relationships, cost, expense reduction, and sustainability, round out that list. For more information about the profession, read the 2023 Pulse Report, now available at theiaa.org. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, or a rating. If you'd like to enjoy an extended version of the discussions featured today, visit theiaa.org, where IIA members get access to a longer version of this episode with bonus information and insights on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And learn even more in the June issue of Internal Audit magazine, which examines why DEI efforts should be measured, meaningful, and modeled. Look for a link in comments or show notes. Plus yourself with the IIA. Earn your data analytics and literacy certificate. For more info, visit theiia.org/plusyourself. Thanks for joining us for All Things Internal Audit from the IIA. We'll connect again soon.